to know everything.
It's been Agatha all along.
It's twilight time.
Wanda and Vision, aren't we a five-pair?
This is our home now. I want us to fit in.
Oh, this is gonna be a gas.
Where did you two move from? How long have you been married? And why don't you have children yet?
Our story.
I think what my wife means to say is that we moved from...
Moved from where? Married when?
How's it going, guys? Welcome back to my channel and time for a new episode of Luke's TV Reviews. This time around, we'll be looking at the TV show that has taken over the world and marks Marvel's first major step into expanding their interconnecting story in the MCU onto TV, WandaVision. And it goes without saying, but spoiler warning, I am going to be talking about some huge plot details and reveals throughout the entire series and including the finale too. So if you have not yet seen WandaVision, I don't know if this video is going to be for you, but feel free to check out some of my other reviews on this channel while you're here. Picking up after the devastating events of Infinity War and Endgame, Wanda is discovered to have created her own reality in which Vision is still alive and they are living the idyllic lifestyle, except from the outside looking in, the entire town and its residents have taken the form of a sitcom. Now, the MCU has certainly dipped its toe into television before, from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. to Daredevil. This isn't exactly uncharted territory for them. The difference with WandaVision, however, is that this show has the budget and production behind it of that of a feature film, and is directly tied into central overarching stories within the MCU, rather than just kinda existing in their own bubble. And seeing as 2020 marked the first year since 2009 that we didn't get a single new release within the MCU, it was really nice to be welcomed back into this universe. And with WandaVision being the first show of quite a few that Marvel have in the pipeline, I thought it was the perfect choice. To begin with, the whole sitcom approach I thought was a really novel idea. It meant for the show's creator, Jac Schaeffer, that she could play with that format. All episodes, besides the final two, resemble that of various sitcoms through the ages. The first couple of episodes is a throwback to sitcoms like The Dick Van Dyke Show or I Love Lucy. Later in the season, it progressed into shows such as Family Ties, and eventually towards a more modern era with Malcolm in the Middle and Modern Family. And the creative team go to exceptional length to bring about the feel of these sitcoms. There are these very catchy theme tunes for different episodes depending on the decade and what sitcom it's meant to be kind of honouring. Theme songs that are written by Kristen Anderson-Lopez and her husband Robert Lopez, a songwriting duo behind the likes of Frozen. And just the overall aesthetic of the show was really nice because it felt like a pseudo homage to the sitcom genre, something that I thought was a really refreshing take. But obviously the show is not a sitcom, and as episodes begin to pick apart, there is an underlying mystery of what Wanda has exactly done here. Now, I have to say that I really enjoyed the first few episodes. I was really involved in this mystery that they were spending their time gradually revealing rather than just having an episode dedicated to answering all of our questions. And then episode 4 was an entire episode dedicated to answering the majority of our questions. I'll admit, the opening of that episode was terrific, exploring more into the events of when everyone who was snapped away returns and the chaos that would ensue. But for me, the rest of that episode was so exposition heavy, answering questions that, let's face it, if you could put 2 and 2 together, it was pretty easy to solve. It was relatively obvious that Wanda had constructed this reality to help with her grief after losing Vision, so by transforming the entire town of Westview and its residents to suit her needs, she can live happily with her synthetic husband and her make-believe kids. Nevertheless, the show did develop into a very engrossing drama. Obviously, at its core, it's about Wanda keeping this mirage going, but the show frequently cuts outside the confines of this reality to characters like Monica Rambeau, Jimmy Woo, Darcy Lewis, and the Agents of S.W.O.R.D. who are constantly monitoring the situation. And one major takeaway from this whole series is that I think that Monica Rambeau is on her way to becoming one of my favourite characters in the MCU. Teyonah Parris crushes it in the role with her strong will and determination, and they stay true to her comic book roots because after travelling through that barrier, she definitely has some badass powers that they are very clearly going to come into play in Captain Marvel 2. And as for Jimmy, it was a nice touch to see that he had perfected the card trick.
How'd you do it, Scott?
Do what?
The card trick.
James E. Woo, FBI.
Popping back inside Westview, I was a really big fan of Vision's overall arc of the show. How he is eventually coming to terms that this world around him is not what it seems. And there's that amazing scene where he tries to leave and briefly manages to escape before being pulled back in, which was quite disturbing from Marvel. Paul Bettany too, man, he eats up everything in this show, especially in the opening episodes where you can tell he had so much fun working around the silly nature of classic sitcoms. But through and through, this is Wanda's show, and Elizabeth Olsen has never been better. She fits in so naturally to the sitcom hijinks, but when the facade drops, particularly when she quite literally throws Monica through the fourth wall, the sheer power of Wanda is made apparent. I don't think there's any doubt in anyone's mind that Wanda is the most powerful character in the MCU, and this show only adds to that belief. I mean, she literally bends an entire town to suit her will. But such power attracted the attention of Kathryn Hahn, who seemingly starts out as a nosy neighbour following the rules of Wanda's show, but it's only as the series enters its final few episodes that Agnes properly revealed herself to be Agatha Harkness, a witch who is after Wanda's powers. Now, this big reveal didn't come as much of a shock to me because I was aware of her character through the comics, but Kathryn Hahn chews the scenery to death in this role. I thought she was fantastic, and she made for a very appropriate villain for the show and for Wanda's character. Ultimately, however, despite all the sitcom hijinks and the action, the show is fundamentally about Wanda's grief. Not just the loss of Vision, but the continual grief throughout her life. Episode 8 showed us how to do an exposition episode properly, and not feel like the creators are just spoon-feeding the audience answers. They took the veil off of some of our underlying questions, whilst also advancing characters at the same time. It's here that we learn about Wanda's connection to sitcoms and how it was a staple at her household in Sokovia. And as the finale came swooping in, it dealt Wanda the final blow, as she had to leave this world behind and reach the final stage of grief, acceptance. She had to let go of Vision and her children. And that final scene shared between Wanda and Vision definitely ranks as one of the most emotional in the MCU. The finale itself, though, I thought was very satisfying. It definitely had a lot to cram in, and that meant that some elements felt a bit rushed. But now we properly understand that Wanda has fully embraced her true destiny, and that she's always had magic powers, but Hydra's experiments merely amplified them. And I think that's a cool way to look at this show, and see it as the origin story of Scarlet Witch, seeing as Wanda now seems to be assuming that side of her. I also found it quite funny that Schaeffer and her team definitely messed around with us as fans. Look, some of you may not be aware of this, but if you went online and any social media platform around when the episodes were released, and for that matter, just throughout the weeks in between, theories were flying around like crazy. Who's the airspace engineer that Monica's friends with? Is that the Quicksilver from Fox's X-Men universe? Is that Fly secretly Mephisto who is controlling everything? Some revelations led somewhere, and some were merely red herrings. The airspace engineer didn't really have much of a payoff, and as for Evan Peters' role in the show, let's just say that we're putting the multiverse on hold for the time being. I reckon Kevin Feige was probably pulling the strings on this one and was just messing around being like, let's cast Evan Peters as Quicksilver in the show, and then the fans are going to be mad as hell when they find out that the payoff is actually...
Boner.
But as fans, I do think that we need to be careful when theorizing. It's important to remember that theories should not devolve into expectations. We as fans aren't always in control of the story. Sure, creators will listen to our responses, but there is always that balancing act. Let's face it, would it have been cool for Reed Richards to show up? For Doctor Strange to appear? For Quicksilver to have been the first link of the multiverse leading to Michael Fassbender's Magneto finally stepping into the MCU? Of course! But that would have completely detracted away from the purpose of the show, which is Wanda's story. And thankfully, that is what the show prioritised at all times. So, where does that leave us now? Well, Monica seems set to go to space. Agatha is back to her nosy neighbour character, although I doubt it's the last we've seen of her. There is still a Vision of sorts out there, and it seems like he may have regained his memory, so this probably won't be the last of Paul Bettany in the MCU. And Wanda appears to have exiled herself whilst learning more about her powers, which is where I think Doctor Strange will come into play in his film. Overall, do I think WandaVision is the best thing Marvel has created? No. I wouldn't even say that it's the best TV show from Marvel because that belongs to Daredevil. But in terms of forging this new path for the MCU, WandaVision laid down some very strong groundwork with terrific character development and an engaging tone throughout. So overall, I'm going to give WandaVision an 8.5 out of 10. Anyway guys, those were my thoughts on WandaVision. Let me know, have you caught up with the show yet? Is it on your to-do list? What did you think? Let me know down in the comments below. And my question to you, seeing as Wanda loves sitcoms so much, I would like to know, what is your favourite sitcom of all time? I'm gonna have to give the most obvious answer here. It's the US Office. God damn, I love that show so much. And as always, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Hello, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you have, make sure to click that like button, and if you aren't already, click that subscribe button too.